morning. This is Tracy Brooker with Creative Outcomes Podcast, a podcast about homeschooling, unschooling, alternative education, and all the ways that we can offer you successful tips and research to get you started. Today with me, I have Catherine Fraise with 100 Roads, and I'm so excited to have her because I really feel like there are people out there with a lot of ideas, but this woman is in action. And today with Catherine, I am going to be talking about the power of combining both virtual and in-person space for learning. So Catherine, let's start you off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you come on the podcast?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tracy, for having me on. I love talking to people who are considering homeschooling or unschooling, or in particular founders who have a group or a community that they're serving, because, we have been researching and actually creating in-person and virtual space for founders and people who want to be looking after their group of learners. And any way that I can get the word out so that people know what is available to them and all the tools, especially now during COVID, that have been evolved to help them to actually launch their community, into a space. I want to make sure that these founders and interested folks get information.
Which I love. And, COVID has presented us with an interesting perspective, right? It says, now what are we going to do? And we do have, with the community that you and I are involved in, alternative education, a lot of unschooling free democratic schools. They, I want to start a school, but in person became none. And, who's to say this won't happen again? But I know deep within our conversation with this idea of free schools, unfortunately, there are a lot of schools that just haven't been able to survive, right? COVID or not, they just have this difficulty. And I think what you've created, I think my favorite part is this idea of global. It's not just here, in one state, the United States. What you're doing is actually on a global platform. So can you tell us specifically about what you're creating here?
Yeah, of course. I did start out creating in person. If you know anything about what I've done, I created a 32,000 square foot, I guess you'd call it a learning center, but It was really, for me, it was like a sandbox for all these families to come in and co-create exactly what they wanted for their children's education. And it was in a beautiful business park. We had a giant big red barn at the front, which was where we had conferences, and we had an Acton Academy micro school there. And then in our industrial section, we had all kinds of spaces for authentic creative self-expression, so that the kids can fully and authentically express themselves and discover who they are, and get mad skills in the wood shop and soldering. We had a lab with this scientist. She had a PhD from Yale, and she was incubating scientists there in the back lab. So we had all these kids running around doing all sorts of different learning activities, and it was fun. There was this element of freedom and creativity, and reciprocity, as all these parents were helping each other create these educational things, right? So, but with COVID, having a big building, and then all the issues that have come down the pike with COVID, that have actually been dividing community, like, the people who wear masks, who don't wear masks, just the actual cost it takes to clean and to keep a building clean, and then all the protocols that you have to put in place. It was pretty stifling for, large community to sort of maintain their interactivity under those circumstances. So what happened at Workspace Education, which is what I created, is that all these families who knew each other sort of potted up into little groups, and they were working out of each other's houses. But of course, that wasn't great for our building and the future of what we were doing financially. So I went about using this as an opportunity to create what we were doing on the ground in in the cloud.
In the cloud.
Above ground. If you can imagine a clamshell, and on the bottom you have your in-person space, and then above it in the cloud. You have your basically replica of that. And so there will be some things that are much easier to do in the cloud and you don't need an in-person space for, right? So unless you're doing something in the wood shop, obviously you're not going to be able to do that in the cloud. But if you're organizing or you're trying to gather people from all over the world to do certain things, that's a much better place to do that. Correct. So we were thinking of like, what is the best space to do different educational things? And then that also led to discussions of, do we actually need an in-person space, like a full-time in-person space? Or could the in-person activities be embedded in the community in different spaces? Or, one day maybe in the forest and one day here and one day there. Or could you have like 2 days a week in person and then full-time, in the sky component? Because your space, your virtual space that you can create and design, or we're happy to give our designs away. We have we've been researching and really enjoying putting together fabulous places for learning in the cloud for people, because now those resources are available. You can have the best of both worlds, and you can make it much more cost effective. That was one of the biggest problems that founders encountered, the ones that came to our training at 100 Roads, where we develop founders and help them create their in-person and virtual spaces. Their biggest stumbling blocks was actually finding space and affording space. Correct. That's around 30% of their budgets. And then I would say that's probably a fear of anyone who just wants to start a business in general. Yeah. When you're talking about, the first thing that comes to your mind is, where am I going to get the money? I mean, just the truth. That's a big load off, right? If you don't have to deal with not just a building, but all the costs involved in actually owning a building. Renting is better, of course, but it's still expensive. It's still right. You still have to pay every month, right? That doesn't go away, no matter if you have COVID or you don't have COVID. That's correct. But your physical space, no matter if it's a snow day or, is a persistent space. And you can actually make space now that actually looks like a town. So you can walk around the space. Seriously, you can walk around. I love this vision. I love it. You bump into people, you have your little conversation, you keep going, and then you bump into someone else, right? You can decide to meet somewhere. You can go to the park and have sit at the park bench and you can play virtual chess or whatever you want. I love it. You've got this going on. So you've got buildings. So if you have buildings, when you go into a door of a building, you portal into the interior, and there are little chairs and little workstations and all sorts of things. So you can have buildings that are designed for co-working. We and Workspace Sky Teens, the one that we just launched in September, we have movie theatre, we have a noodle shop, we have a fitness centre. You can go into your little yoga mat, and then you can watch yoga. I love it. You can do. There's just so many different things. You can meet and have celebrations, which is lovely. You can design little rituals around what your community does and host them there. And people that's one of the questions I was asking you. So your community, so say if I were to have my own little space, I'm a founder, right? And I have my own little building, and other people from other communities, they get to come in, and I can pretty much just create what I want in my building, correct? Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's free. Like the platform we use, it's free to design whatever you want and have up to 25 people in it. Lovely. Right? And for a lot of these founders, they're only serving smallish groups like that. So that's a perfect way to start, and a perfect way to start developing your community, right, in a little space like that. I mean, if you want, like what we do in 100 Roads is what I've developed over the last year, is that we actually manage these little spaces if you want, like you could have us manage your space. But, you can easily do it yourself, and we show you how to do that. We have a free founders course to show you how to do that. Nice. But if you want it managed, so what that means is we open your space at a particular time, we close your space. We have now a way that you can put all your classes on a little catalog, so your students have an app on their phone so they can see what they've got. We actually text our learners at 8:00 every morning to say, okay, this is what's happening in the sky. Wow. So they get their text, their parents get their text, so they can just look and see, am I coming or not? Do I have a class or not? Where is it? And it could be, I'm doing physics in the Space Needle in our Laws of the Universe Centre, which is part of our big world that we've created for education for teens.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this question because I know a lot of parents are probably wondering this is, what about safety? We have all this technology, all these issues going on. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, I think that it's really normal for humans. Like, we are wired to worry about safety all the time, especially around our kids. But when you look at what your kids do day to day, like how they use the internet, they are a lot less safe just regularly, on the different game platforms and perusing the internet. To get into our space on our platform, right? You have to, anyone over 18 has to be background checked. They come in with a particular email address, right? And it's a browser-based system. So if anything happens to you, or your child is on there and someone says something mean, they just click out of the tab, right? So they don't have to tolerate anything that they feel like, is hurtful. Also, our space is also fully staffed. We set our space up and we create this container at Workspace Guide Teens. It's all done by psychologists, actually, to really make this beautiful brine, these kids are in our space. They're marinating in joy and love and surrounded by supportive adults who are trying to help them really self-actualize, build their self-awareness, build their ability to function well in any situation. And we're also helping them master their will, which means to get all their energy to go in a particular direction. So
I think in our conversation before, one of the favorite thing you said was it was creating a space where the child's essence is able to grow and expand. And I think that was so beautifully said, because I think that truthfully is what self-directed learning is. It's just allowing that child, that student's being
grow into itself.
Right. And they get to choose classes and they get to choose activities and they, it's a whole different way. Yeah.
That's right. They're making decisions for themselves and they practice making decisions for themselves.
I love that.
Over their childhood and teenage years, they become really good decision makers, right?
Right.
And you see the consequences of the choices they make.
Absolutely. Now, we were talking about the combination of both virtual and in person. And so, fingers crossed, we will all have the opportunity obviously things are back in, states are going through this whole, kids are going to school, but parents now have this choice. Some have brought their kids home and they're going, holy, I never thought about this homeschooling, unschooling, self-directed learning. And yes, we have this virtual. So talk about now the possibility, because, I know you've discussed it with me, but please share with the audience about your vision of creating these physical spaces along with it and the benefits of that.
Well, I really am focusing on the virtual component. I mean, I have had an Acton Academy in the physical inside of Workspace and created a big Workspace Education. But, we are a diverse population of humans. We all gravitate towards particular philosophies and different ways of doing things. So, I think that, the future is actually a lot of small micro schools or nano schools or
pods, I think they're called. Yeah.
They could be called pods, but sort of anything in that. Let's say you've got let's say 5 to 35 kids, these little micro schools. And people tend to gravitate towards other families who have similar values and like a pedagogy. And wouldn't it be great if we could join these little micro schools with these particular pedagogies into one sort of, or to have a shared virtual landscape so they could be in person, right? Doing their thing, being completely autonomous, but also have a little headquarters or a little a virtual satellite headquarters in a virtual place with other micro schools that have a similar pedagogy maybe, or
Yes.
a value system, or one to participate together and do certain activities together.
Beautiful.
So those sort of activities would be things like having like an entrepreneurial fair with all the kids.
Lovely.
Right. And then all the parents from all the different micro schools would come and walk around and look at what everyone else is doing. This is a lot to organize for a founder for their one little community, right? But you know, if one person wants to organize it for, let's say, 10 little micro schools,
correct,
that would be their contribution to the larger community, right? The children would get a lot more customers for all their little things.
Right. I love it.
Yeah, and then another little micro school might be like, oh, I'm going to do a career fair, because that, you know, as the founder might be like, that's what I used to do. So now all the other founders don't have to worry about, you know, the career exploration piece as much, because they've got this big career fair coming. Or maybe someone specializes in educational pathways, or maybe another one in post-education. Vocational, or anything, or world travel, or whatever it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're creating this pool of resources that they can all benefit from, and the kids benefit from, because what I found at Workspace by doing it on the ground, even with 80 families, we didn't have enough kids at all the different age levels for the kids to have enough peers to choose from, to have enough people who wanted to do this or enough people who wanted to do that. So that
connection's huge. That was my next kind of, when you talk about the peers, that was the next question is, well, I don't even think it's a question. Just to see teens, I mean, to have this facility, whether it's in the cloud or in person or a combination of, it creates this expansion of their world. It creates these connections outside of their immediate, you know, like what's in front of them, just virtually. That again is safe, like-minded people, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and the pilot we're doing right now, we have a free pilot going on, but we have like Acton Academies. We have a Montessori school from New York City who's joining with their adolescent population, and we have a group of teens in London. We have a group of teens in Canada. We are hoping to serve this group of teens in Puerto Rico, which we're working out right now.
That's incredible.
And, you know, this is really a pilot to see if we can, you know, how these diverse groups are going to be co-creating this universe for these.
What they're going to learn from each other, though, is just incredible. You know, I mean, I just think of that alone, for them to all to be able to connect. You have, you know, someone in Puerto Rico, somebody in Canada, somebody in London. It's exposure that these kids may not have ever received. You know,
right, and they might find like right now we have one learner who's in London, one actually in Fairfield, Connecticut, and they're both really into politics, and they have together a podcast, and it's just so fun to listen to them, you know, talking about Brexit or talking about like all the things that are going on, and you know, and their opinions of what they're getting, you know, from their sources, and you know, they're bantering back and forth, but you know, they've got two completely different perspectives, and then how people in America view what's going on in Europe versus vice versa. It's just a really interesting exchange to see, and they get very stimulated by you know playing tennis with these ideas.
I love it. Now, and again, I always kind of think, you know, if you think in the future, even their relationship, you know, 20, 30 years down the line, and because of you and what you've created, I mean, who knows where either of them will end up? I mean, you know.
Yeah. It's interesting, but they've also been doing things like, wow, we can create this like it's like a town, right? Yeah. Now they can be the first selectmen, right? They're gonna, you know, make sure that everybody has a voice in the community. You know how.
I love it.
And then also integrate new tools like the Web3 tools, you know, to create new ways of everyone being able to vote or participate in the direction of this co-learning community. I mean, it's a co-learning community, but it's not with individual students. It's with individual pods of teens that are all collaborating. On
a bigger picture, not just two kids. It's on a bigger picture. Right. Now, I'll ask you this first, because I think this might be the easier question. What's your favorite part of creating such a platform?
Well, my favorite part, I think, is putting something new. Like I see, like, what kind of person do we need to create that could thrive in this changing world, right? Technology is speeding up so quickly. They have to be able to learn anything, anywhere, well, right? And especially, for our community of, unschoolers, they naturally learn actually very well. These are the kids that I'm having the deepest conversations with,
right?
Because when they want to learn something,
they just go for it.
They mine the internet. They watch 16 documentaries, and they know more than the average person, and they're super interested in it. And you can see when you're talking to them, their energy rises, and it's just like, you've struck some kind of resonance in them, right?
Yeah.
And then they sharing that energy with their peers around them, and their peers are like, oh,
it's infectious.
I need to into something, or that hooked me in. Now I can do that. And now they're having these conversations, and these kind of virtual spaces they are the energy that's created through these conversations is kind of this power that they get. And it's kind of an addictive thing, being able to have a really deep conversation about something you love with someone else.
Yeah.
And this is what we're trying to encourage in our virtual platforms, because, we have a lot of, it's a video chat. It's about conversations. It's about sharing what's going on inside of you into a little forum. Right?
I love that.
And our job as Workspace Guide team members, I have a team of 28 people who are running and designing and making this happen behind the scenes. Our job is to create this exploratory landscape and invite guest speakers who are giving them ideas to ruminate on and to talk about, to give them really good work habits, so that they can learn anything and then, take notes and maybe earn credit for it somewhere.
Right.
And also develop the soft skills, so you're really actively listening to those people that you're talking to. You're not just spouting sound bites, right?
It's not rote, right?
And we're also developing what you know, and
it's meaningful. Anyway, it's meaningful.
It's just been so delightful getting to know these students. So I'd say maybe that is my favorite part, is just seeing these students blossom as you really listen to them, and they are revealing their essence in this space. And, I feel honored to be part of their journey.
I love it. Now, follow-up question. What has been your biggest challenge?
Yeah. Well, when you are canoeing in unknown waters, you never know what's, around the corner. I would say that, for me, I'm a little bit of a fearless learner, right? So I know that technology is changing quickly, and that I had to dig in and learn these tools. And I encourage the people that we work with in the founders training to do the same thing. But, there are a lot of things I don't know. We are creating this mesh that is working really well, mesh of these learning communities outside the school system, right? There are a lot of entrenched interests in education, right? So I know there's going to be some pretty huge rocks down the road in my river.
Right. You're on your canoe, right? There's
yeah, but I also feel like, there's safety in numbers. If we keep small and agile, and we're really providing exactly what these kids need to thrive, and we know we have all the ingredients to build fantastic alternative educations now, right? They're all there. Maybe as a parent, you're not aware of them yet, but your children can get, academically, at least what is going on in even the top high schools pretty inexpensively and pretty easily these days.
Yeah,
and I have to say, when I went to go to get my child into college, it was almost like, I emailed them and said, look, he filled in an online application, and they said, we'll give you an answer in 2 weeks. And this was before I even gave him the transcript. I'm like, it should have been harder than this. Like, I've been panicking. Not panicking, but like I've been thinking, gearing myself up for the big going into college and getting accepted.
As an unschooling parent, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, but it was, it's like, it's almost embarrassingly easy to get into college. and my son's been able to do, college level courses and get college credits,
That's correct.
for the last couple of years. And, he's already, earned a good chunk of his college credits. So really that transition was not any reason why you should hesitate.
That's correct.
If you're on that edge of,
and most colleges now, because of the population of homeschoolers, they have a homeschool liaison. And to be honest with you, because my kids did the community college route, even though maybe it was 1-2 classes, they were considered transfer students. So it just was, it was a no-brainer.
Right? Like it was and anyway, like I'm hearing today that, from all the people I'm talking to, especially the young people I'm working with in the creation of Workspace Sky, ones in other countries, we have a fully global team.
Right.
They're saying that, that the ones actually working, they're saying that they went through college, but their siblings are just doing online courses now and getting jobs in like user experience. And like there is such a shortage of jobs in this.
That's correct. Things are changing quickly.
Quickly. They can get jobs like that straight out of school, right?
That's correct.
Then they can do college on the side. Like you can you can easily get college on the side. It's just if you want your child or your child wants to have the college experience, like the drinking, the partying,
right.
And maybe they really do. Like that might be a reason, but it's also a very expensive party,
That's correct.
for them. So, I guess it's really all about, your values as a family. Maybe you want your child to go to a particular school. We have a lot of friends who've, I've been in homeschooling. Well, gosh, I was homeschooling for 15 years. And some of the kids that my children went to, were doing homeschooling with, one was the co-valedictorian of Princeton. We had, others got into Harvard. Like it's not like you can't get into these schools.
Right.
You just have to do enough and create a really nice transcript that these kinds of colleges want to do. So if your child wants to go to a particular school, you just have to make sure that they're concentrating on doing enough that will make their application.
Well, it's not just the school too. I mean, I would have to say it's the, like you can't get a medical degree unless obviously you have a certain amount of schooling and then you have to do your residency, et cetera. And, I have 2 different kids, one who is exactly what you said, going through the apprenticeship program, and he was definitely more my unschooler by 2 years, but the self-starter, and that's where he's at, and he loves it, and he's happy. And my other one also loves what he's doing. He has 1.5 years left of college, but said, I can't, every job I look for, I need my degree. And so the good news is he already has an internship. He had one they're rehiring this year, and they're ready to hire him when he's done. And so he knows, okay, this is the path I've chosen. So, but he has the motivation, and without a doubt, like we discuss even graduate school, and the next thing was, well, if I work for a state, they help pay for it. Yep. Yes, they do. Real quick, I want to, if you could, I always say this because I kind of always wonder if you were to look back at yourself. So even before you might have even known about self-directed education and, you're about to have kids embark on this idea of self-directed learning, or if you could just offer the best advice for anyone who is considering joining a platform, considering being a founder, what would be the best advice you can offer them?
Number one advice for everybody, actually, is that if you want to really help develop your child in any way that they're going, is to really listen to them, to really see if you can sort of find their keys and just be really open to what is their best direction going forward. And for some learners, it could be school or a different kind of school.
Correct.
And for some, it could be becoming self-directed. But like if you have a child who because of their, the way that they're wired, they're just going to be on the computer all day playing computer games, and they're really introverted, and they might,
right.
You might feel really they're not going to engage heavily with that, with other people and do lots of different things. And it might be important to get them into a in-person, small micro school, right? But then there are other children that, just thrive in a self-directed learning environment as well. So, I think in families, you might have one child that might be great at self-directed learner and another who really isn't. So just get really granular with your kids and really think about all the little threads of evidence that they have left for you, so you can work out how to best support them in their next steps, and really listen to them of what they think would be their next steps, and then see how you could be a resource person to them and not try and be like, oh, the perfect parent would, force my kid to do something. Because I always feel like for every force, every time you do that, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yes.
Right. So it's almost, you have to get your energy to where your child is and then move forward together. And then that person feels your support right there. And then you help by putting all those options in front of your child so they can feel what resonates within them, so they know how to move forward.
Absolutely. And I think as a parent, I always tell parents that I've worked with, don't do anything that you're completely uncomfortable with, because then, but not to say don't step into fear. Also, you have to step into fear eventually, because you don't want to have those regrets either. And
we have regrets. We might have regrets, some people might have regrets or think they will have regrets, right? If their child doesn't get to that point at a certain time. And I think this is where we tie ourselves in knots as parents, is that we've set this okay, here they should be in college or should be at this point. But in reality, the diversity of teens are so diverse, some aren't ready at the 17, 18 point to go to college, right? And some might need a couple more years to bake until they're ready for that. And, some might need more time in nature, because we evolved as humans in nature, right? To really blossom and to have enough reflection time to really work on how they want to fully and authentically express themselves in the world going forward. And we actually hobble our children, I think, by making them choose too quickly when they're not ready. And they end up going and doing some university course, and then 2 years into that, they do a 180.
Yeah, and that's okay too. I mean, life does happen, I without a doubt. I mean, what did they say? There's this huge, they change their degrees 5 times before they actually figure it out. Or most of them end up just dropping out, going, this isn't working for me. And I always say, life happens and it's okay. And so this experience happened, it didn't work out for me, so you pick up and you try again. This is what we call life. And I think as a parent, being that support, being open, that's what they really need.
That's such a good point, right? They're going to be doing this over and over and over, right? They're going to be learning this whole time throughout their lives. They're going to be constantly reframing themselves, recreating themselves. So this is just one little inflection point where they're recreating themselves, not just the inflection point. They're never going to get where they need to go, right?
I love it.
So we need to take that pressure off us and just really look at the little essence that's in front of us. And what right now does this child need to fully and authentically blossom or be themselves in a space? And what would that space look like? And is it at home, or is it in a little micro school, or is it something that you can create with a few other families?
And I will share just what you said. If you are open as a parent and you have the awareness to say, what do they need? To me, I think to even have the awareness, what is their essence? That brings your connection in a much more deeper level. I mean, for me, that's what I go, okay. It brings it in as a parent that's so much bigger than trying to tell them what to do, how to do it, and controlling things. So,
you see your kids, but do you really notice, right?
Yeah.
And that changes the quality of energy between the two of you. Yeah. And I think if you focus on your relationship, how can you have the best relationship like for life with your child starting today? What would that look like? Right. And because ultimately we will feel, as parents, we feel wonderful when we have these, when our family is all in balance and the relationships are great in our family, right? And everyone's blossoming in the family as best as possible, right?
That's correct.
And that is also a lifelong journey. Like,
right. What is it really about? Ultimately, is it really about school, or is it about, we have children, we love our children, and it's about kind of creating this wonderful bond relationships that, we hope will continue the rest of our lives.
And we're role modeling for our children how to create these great relationships for their futures with their children, right?
Yeah, so it's the new focus, right?
Right, it's maybe breaking old patterns. So rather than be hyper-focused on, getting them into Harvard or some particular school, which, will probably happen anyway, right? You have to really, I think, we can really focus on what is important, and we will reap the benefits of that, throughout the rest of our lives.
Well, Catherine, thank you so very much. If you could share with people real quick, and it's definitely on my website, but share with people where they can get a hold of you, reach out to you to learn more about your project. Go for it.
Yeah, so I'm really happy to talk to people who are really interested in this thing, what I've been talking about in general, or especially founders who want to create like something like this, because we do have a free orientation to co-learning. So that's what we're doing. We're learning collaboratively. And that is run through my research and development organization, which is called 100 Roads. So if you are interested at all in what I've been talking about, you can just write to me. Maybe an email would be nice. Cath, CATH at 100 Roads, which is 100roads.org. And, let's start a conversation about that. We also, if you want to check out the kinds of things we do in our teen community, because right now we've got a virtual campus for teenagers up and running. We started that in September. You can go to Workspace Sky. So that's workspacesky.org. And you can just sort of read a little bit about what's going on. And maybe if you want to see what it looks like on a virtual campus, which I'm hoping you do, because it's pretty cool. I think it's very cool. You can come to one of our open houses, even if you're just curious. So you just sign up for the open house, and
that's cool.
You can pick, I'm just curious. And we can take you on a tour. I think the next one we're doing stand up under the water, like
I
stand
love
up the water world. I know the teens are going to be playing on the ice under the Northern Lights, and then doing the meet and greet around the campfire. And we have people doing our training. We have a founders gathering, and then we have a parent panel, I think, with parents. So, and a tour, of course. So you could just come to any parts of these things, or bring your teens and see what they think.
That is awesome. Okay, one last thing, because I always love, do you have a favorite book that you would like to share? I know there's a lot of them out there, even if it's two. All
right, two? You want two? These are the two on my desk right now. Number one is regenerative business. So I'm very much into regenerative education. And if you look at chapter 3 in this book, it basically talks about the qualities that are going to really serve your children in the future, and how you can help them develop these qualities in themselves. I think there's a magical, chapter 3 is magical to me. So that's always pretty close. I'm very much into regenerative education. And the second one is a kind of an interesting choice, is called Energies. It's by J.G. Bennett. And it actually talks about, it's really sort of a metaphysical work about energies and systems, and how the role of a human is to transform these energies to make them, I
think that's my next read.
It's a fascinating journey into some of the philosophical roots of creating this energetic system, where we're trying to have these kids surrounded by love and joy and gratefulness and these kinds of energies, because that's very soul giving, and we want them to have that rather than the stress and anxiety of a school system.
Well, you definitely exude that energy, and I'm so grateful that you asked to be on this podcast, and I look forward to hearing to more success with 100 Roads. And again, and so much, gratitude, gratefulness for you coming on here today. Thank you, Catherine. And if anyone, you can go to my website. I will add Catherine and her information to my website at tracybrooker.com, or even a little excerpt on what we talked about today. So thank you, everyone. And take care.
All right. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Outcomes podcast. And if you'd like to learn more, go to my website at tracybrooker.com.